New Radio Sports Network and 1041 WRLU. Welcome to another edition of the show with head Green Bay Gamblers coach Pat Mikesch, coming off a busy weekend in Michigan. Coach, did you feel like you should have just set up a forwarding address or put your picture on a pole in Michigan? Because you were there for a really long time, considering you had Team USA, you had the two games against Muskegon, and then you had all the excitement around the BioSteel All-American game.
Yeah, it was leaving Thursday morning and getting back last night on our flight. It was a busy 5 days over in the Michigan area, but a productive one for us.
Now 1-0-2 for the Gamblers, and we'll get to that BioSteel All-American game in just a little bit. I guess, first of all, we kind of talked about, is there anything sweeter than an overtime win? So I guess the question this week should be, is there anything more frustrating than having not one but two overtime games go against you?
Yeah, and we've been strong in our overtimes this year. So, you're going to have the highs and the lows of those. I thought, the Saturday night overtime loss, we ended up taking a penalty in overtime. They got their power play and executed a nice shot for the Williams kid, who's a great player for them. And then that second night, it was kind of a survival game, I think, for both teams, being 3-3 and playing tough competition. So it was there wasn't a lot of up and down in that game. It was a little tighter checking, and we got the early lead. They responded late in the first period, and then there wasn't another goal until overtime. And we got a breakaway with Damon Carfagna, and he had a great look at it and came right back down, and it was probably 30 seconds later they ended up scoring. So you got to, in overtime, take advantage of those opportunities when you get them.
And, how do you even, I know we talked before, a lot of pasta eating on these road trips, but I guess how do you kind of have to ramp up practices a little bit different during the course of the week or the week before to get ready for a stretch like this where, you had players playing 4 games in a matter of 6 days?
Yeah, a lot of it's just that load management and, what you do leading up to the 3-3, and then for those guys in the top prospect game having to play a 4th game. But it was a lighter week last week, trying to make sure we were going to feel fresh when we got off that bus and ready to play over in Plymouth against that great US team that, has been beating college teams. And so we knew they were going to be a great test, and we got off to a real nice start in that. And I think some of that was how well the guys prepared, throughout the week to make sure they were ready to play against them.
And to that BioSteel All-American game, you mentioned Damon there a little bit, had a chance at a breakaway in that game, did not converted in the All-American game. And I'm going to let you share that exchange here. We had a good laugh before we came on here, because here I was super excited. I'm thinking, hey, you're a proud papa. He comes off the ice. You're able to say, hey, nice goal. And you said what?
Well, I said you were supposed to do that the night before when you had that breakaway. And he just smiled and said, I knew that's what you're going to say to me. So, no, our guys represented our organization extremely well in that game. And I'm happy they had that experience. But when I saw him coming down to the breakaway, I was like, now he'll score, where he didn't do it in Muskegon the night before. But credit to Dame. They all 3 of the kids showed really well in that game.
Did you give Cam and Nick a nice that a boy, and then you laid into Damon a little bit? What was the order of conversation there?
I think my exact quote was like, great job last night, boys. You guys represented very well. And Dame, you should have scored that on Sunday night instead of on Monday night. And he goes, that's all he said was, I knew you were going to say that.
Walk off for Coach Mikesch as Gamblers coming up on another really kind of tough weekend coming up. You're at the travel across the great state of Illinois. You got a game against Chicago at Fox Valley Ice Arena, and then you're going to have to travel across the other side to get to Dubuque, Iowa, and 2 talented teams, 2 different places. And I guess, how do you mentally prepare for that road trip?
Well, I think we're playing well right now. And our last weekend, 2 weekends ago, when we had Chicago here, I think it was a uplifting for our team, because I thought we were the better team for 5 of the 6 periods. And so I think it's just building off of that and realizing, your road mentality has to match your home mentality now. And and being prepared to play against a strong opponent, just like we did last week against the US 18 team. And then you travel over to Dubuque, and Dubuque, we've won in their building this year. So, you kind of build off of things you've done earlier in the year and learned, that we match up well with everybody we play. And it's just, making sure that our strong is better than theirs.
Comes down to execution, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's going to be the rest of the way. I mean, there's not an easy opponent in our division, and we've seen everybody now. So it's just taking advantage of it. And there's certain things that our team does extremely well, and we need to make sure we implement that early in games and put teams on their heels.
And how important is it at this point of the season to kind of have that success? Chicago, one of the best teams, if not the best team in your division. And I believe you've pretty much, taken out the extra points that you get for overtime losses and shootout wins and things like that. But I think it's almost like 2-2, or you guys are relatively 500 against Chicago. And like you mentioned, you've already got a win against Dubuque, and that's got to give your team a nice dose of confidence.
Yes. And that's, we're going to be playing against one of those teams come playoff time, and we're going to be playing in their buildings and trying to force teams to come and play in our building. So it's just, we're getting stronger. We had a real poor month in November. And since we turned the page from that and got to December, I've really liked the way our team has played.
Does it feel like forever since you've played in front of the home crowd? You opened up the month, you had those 2 games against Chicago a few weeks ago, and this will be your 3rd straight weekend away from the Resch.
Yeah, no, I think it's our 2nd straight weekend away, but we'll be back here in just over a week to bring that Muskegon group here to have to play in our building, and so it's a couple week road trip here and playing very good opponents. When I looked at our January schedule, I said we're going to have to work and we're going to have to be prepared because there's not a night off, and so far our guys have held up extremely well.
And yes, you are right. It feels like 3 weeks away from the Resch Center. Forgot that New Year's was at home as well. So this is kind of payback for that late home visit that you had. And how important is it when you take a look at how those Muskegon games went? I know you can't look ahead and things like that, but the play them quickly again. Obviously, you won't see them this weekend, but you'll see them next weekend to kind of get back on the horse against a team like that.
Yeah, we'll have some good video, and there'll be an opponent that we had just seen, so we won't have to spend a whole lot of time breaking down what they're doing differently or anything like that. Now, we're seeing a Dubuque team on Saturday night that we haven't seen in a while, so I'm interested to see what changes they've made in their lineup, who they have playing with who, and everything that way. So that's kind of you're always looking at the calendar and seeing how familiar you are with your opponent. When just having seen Chicago a week ago, we've got a good idea where their group is at, and so we'll have some video on them. But then at the Dubuque one, it's been a couple months since we've bumped into them. It'll be a good little reboot on what their strengths are and things that worked for us against them.
Does that change your scouting at all, Coach? When you have 2 opponents, one that you've seen really recently, you got that recency bias, if you will. Dubuque, you said you haven't seen them in a couple months. Does that kind of change how you scout these teams, or you still kind of take, okay, these guys are Friday, these guys are Saturday, we'll approach them in that order?
Yeah, we'll do some pre on both of them. But Chicago, I think, is a little bit fresher in our head, and so I'm sure Dubuque is doing different things than they did early in the year. I'm sure they have different line combinations than we got to see early in the year. So just kind of getting a measure stick of what their group is doing right now and what's really working for them that we might have to try to take away. And then, and I think we're a little bit of a different team, and Dubuque's probably, looking at some of our matchups and saying, oh, these guys aren't playing together anymore, and this line's been very good for them. So it's a little bit of them probably learning as much about us as well.
So once again, 2 games this weekend, both on the road. The Gamblers will take on the Steel this on the 21st, and then they'll play at Dubuque on the 22nd. Then they're back at the Resch Center and on 104.1 WRLU January 28th and 29th as they battle Muskegon. Coach, as always, we appreciate the time, and good luck this weekend.
I appreciate it, Tim. Always fun.
All right. You've been listening to the New Radio Sports Network.